My day. I clean up roadkill by nights. I hungry kids night 1 the 1. I'm not at liberty to say which state had done so. I can tell you that around a year ago, I picked up a job for moving those corpses. You see at the side of the road some Bambi on the side of the road. The work is quiet, people don't bother you, and other than an intercom on my dashboard telling me where to go, I have little reason to talk to anyone. I just traverse the highways in my truck. That looks really similar to what horror movies. What have you expect somebody in my profession to be driving? In life, you go through changes, not all of them are welcome, but they're going to happen, whether you're ready or not. Just got to roll with the punches, and that's what I'm doing. Scraping remains off for lands isn't enough to pay the bills, though, and it was around the time I was close to losing. No, I got a peculiar phone call, gave me an interesting change. I can't remember the date, but around 3 months ago I was approached with an offer that, at first, was nothing but humorous. They told me that the line of work I was already in would seemingly integrate into the work they had lined up for me, and they were right. I was used to a long ride, solitude and, most importantly, I knew how to dispose of an animal. What's cautious hesitation? I agreed, and not a day passed before I received my first call. The encounter nearly made me quit on the spot until I saw the pay. I could afford a nice, shiny pickup truck, but I can't imagine the use of owning something like that and spraying the thing down every night. Besides, old Elvis have been keeping me company ever since I pulled my first animal room. Hands off the black car. 80% of the cars that I see passing me by. There's no need for me to elaborate much on my time back then. I don't think either of my employers would be too keen of recounting all that, nor will they like what I'm doing right now. But for the sake of capitalism, can you see, from 9 to 5 I do nothing but wait until some poor animal's time is up or nature kills that. Once that shift ends, though, I sit by my radio when I wait, sometimes minutes, sometimes hours, until I hear faint static and give me the location of the situation and the crypt that I'd be hunting that evening. You've no doubt heard stories of some of the cryptids you can come across. Those are the ones that's on call to take care of. Not all of them are out to harm humans, and some can exist peacefully with the surrounding ecosystems. And put one goes wrong, and that's what I'm calling tonight. I was called in to take care of a swift bastard called the Mile Wolf. How many times like that? The Mayo wolf was once started to be a rare category of cryptids. That's where singular nature, meaning that it was the only one of its kind, and it wasn't until 2 o'clock miles, apart from the time frame of 5 minutes. These things are fast, but it's not that fast, thank God. The agility becomes a priority. Then it's like humans for food, and seemingly I'm bored, and they also feed on any species of wolf that's going to live in the area, and the attacks, for example, that have a pack of wolves without vicious, the clown by marks can be. So after receiving the call, I'm in my way to the cold storage where I kept any clean roadkill, and I pulled a deer from the freezer. It was a heavy bastard. I located the side of the map, some backwoods. Chiropro was primarily used by lost foreigners. I checked everything into the truck bed and I took off. By the time I finally hit the road, the sun had long since left the sky and it was approaching Noah. This is typically the best time for hands. The fewer people the better, but if you wait too long you risk the thing hauling it up for the night. Wolves are very adept at making themselves invisible and can even trick passing observers into thinking that they're just witnessing a normal love. The Maya wolf gets its name from its body structure. If you were looking at it, had Anna Hollywood. The community is still splits on whether or not my works at the hierarchy, like regular packs do, and if they do, well, At 640 was no doubt the alpha. Their tallest statue is in their main feature. No, it gets weirder and you'll see a long cynical-like stomach and chest. They've been compared to thanks and worms, but I see a stronger resemblance to ferrets. They can reach over 10 feet in length and you can tell they're hungry if the middle of their tube-like body is sagging. If that's something you manage to see, it's already too late for you. As I've said before too, these suckers are fast and it doesn't matter if they're running away or towards you, and they're faster. Their bodies allow them to the forest as if they were made of water, and if you wanted to kill one you would have to do it so swiftly. But even that wouldn't be easy. For whatever reason, all these cryptids have accelerated healing, and the mile width is among the worst. Of Emma, I like the worms that they resemble. Even half of its body will begin to regrow after being severed. There is one thing that can help the healing completely and it's far too cliché. From my job. Going over the play my head. I pulled up to my destination about halfway through this included trial and I turned the truck off. I withdrew several small speakers from the back of the truck and I placed in a random positions on the road. On the side of the road I placed the uniform row of rusty iron and I covered them with leaves. My wolves will not make a sound as they approach you. If you are hunting one, you must act fast and quiet or the tables are turned before you can even realize you're drawing your last wrath. Their teeth are some of the sharpest that I've ever seen. They would slice through a tree faster than a chainsaw if one had the mind to do so. In my truck I pulled the double-barrel shotgun. I bought my first day of this job. It's an Elvis got together well. And then my hands on the revolver and I dropped a single very expensive bullet into the chamber. I placed them on the road, landing quickly. I rushed to the open door, my truck, and I took one last. Have you breathed? Just to center myself. My hands pressed hard on the car steering wheel and the horn crowd loud of the best silence of the night balancing through the trees, slamming the door. I swiftly made my way to the ghillie suits and I threw myself under it. I lay on the road and watching the news about the road. Moonlight does my only source of light, you can see it reflection of the pool. Now surrounding the deer mile wolves are conscious. I had no doubt that it was sizing up the deer. I had no doubt that it was at the easy prey. Before I knew it, a shadow lunged down to the life of deering sheets of paper could be heard from the mass of meat, my fingers wrapped around the grip of my shotgun. There was going to do, opening. I was just going to have to go for it and hope everything worked out. You have to take leaps of faith like that. A lot to my line of work. Going over the plan one more time in my head and I read it and I call myself. It was time. Like a maniac. I sprung from under the ghillie suit. Before I even raised the barrel it was already aware of me. His long, slender body began contorting to face me. I didn't have the time so, without a clear shot, I pulled the trigger. The recoil jarred me for a minute but I could see I did some damage to its legs. The meow wolf swung away from me after being shot. It was attempting to play here. It made it several feet and a large sum emanated from the speakers frightening the me off of the new direction. Another speaker went off. It made a frantic sprint towards my truck. My finger clicked a small rubber button on my keys, on the lights of the truck showing brightly, piercing the dark. The road, litten. I can now see the me wolves, albino white hair that was standing on end like it was a pissed off cat. Along with the lights, the radio on the speakers, not to the top, Google read and ran towards the side of the road. And the biggest part of this. You are hunting the things that go bump in the night. Most of them are still animals, though, and they can be predicted. As I watch the me of clamor, To the side of the road I heard the harsh clamping of the row of bear traps. I knew that I was talking about another successful hunt. The thing's frantic movements had been its undoing. If just one or two of its legs have been caught, it could have knocked them off, and I would have. I had more than enough time. I ended up the perfect shot, and with the pull of the trigger, the hammer brought down and injected the bullet. Ugly oval of silver flew from the barrel and straight into the wild side. The only way to really kill one of these is to stop the regeneration completely sober is the cheapest compound known to do. That is no different from my morning job, just a little more intimate. Do I remove the traps? And I threw the corpse into the back of my truck and, covering it with the ghillie suit, and, after packing up all my supplies, I hopped in and I began the long drive home. I am tired but I'm alive, and there is a very long wolf hanging in cold storage and I keep the cryptid bodies around for a while before burying them because, just like the roadkill, they have their purpose, to serve night to furball. It's hard to keep up a social life with a job like this, never mind not having the time between both occupations. Trying to write the scent of dead road killer, some creature's blood, is an easy task and honestly make good money, but I'm not sure what I'm making it for. My routine is to wake up and try my best to acquire some semblance of fresh with a punching bag. Sometimes I just sit and look at it. Memories can be draining. Some people work so that they can live more. I'm discovering that I'm leaving to work. I find more confident in the rides to and from that. I do sit in my house and I don't beat around the bush either. There are nights after a rough hunt that made me feel like a badass and I miss that feeling. As far as 9 to 5 goes, it was scenarios, and then it's out of my hands. There is a skunk discarded into the brush off the interstate that a number of drivers were complaining about. The smell wasn't that bad, Lord knows. I've experienced the worst squatting over the poor thing. I observed it and I considered what could have been more dangerous prey. If I wanted to find out the cause of the skunk's death, I would have to open it up, and that just wasn't going to happen. As I picked it up, however, it felt light and its balance clearly been cracked. Throwing it into the truck bed, I thought of the colossal viper, a massive snake that play able to, through your muscle power, burr underground. It's presumed to either lack the ability to smell her to deny it as a repellent. It will constrict its prey and pull its blood out using its fangs. This year's strength of the thing will leave any animal broken. It wouldn't be too outlandish to assume I'd be getting to call about it in the near future. If it came as close as it did to civilization, it could be a problem. How would I do with something like that? Lucky for me, I pray this night with something a little more docile and smaller than some Hollywood horror snake. I took the day's work and I disposed of whatever I couldn't use, but the skunk went into the storage. Its smell could be useful in the future and waste not and such. I got a call from my employer, a few hours after getting home. It was a simple job, one that had finished quickly enough. Little you need to take another. There are these little creatures called jobbins. I didn't name them. I have no idea what the name game, there is peaceful as encrypted can be. They are almost kind, in fact. You see, they'll sing for you. It's not a song you will enjoy, and for one reason or another it will enable you to enter sleep. Well, if you're already sleeping, you'll be unable to wake up. Something about the frequency locking your brain. Stay awake. They are easy to get rid of. You just have to let them know that their presence is unwelcome, and the reason I was even called in for this one was the caveat that comes with job. And they're so docile that they're easy pickings for larger prey, mainly cryptids. So when the big boys hear the job and singing that, and they will culminate in the area and search of them, Even the apex of cryptids can't resist their call, makes you wonder. I would be going to radio silent for a few days. That is one job about willing to take. My rule is, if something can check a tree at me, I'm going to avoid it. So, like any rational hunter, this is a job that I jumped on. Quick, easy money and no fast. I drove until I saw the distinct red light. The job and give. The best visual that I can give you is, imagine large red lightning bugs with tiny little feelers, and their singing is created by the rapid movement of their wings. God is an annoying to hear. Whole cluster of Emma. I wrapped it all around the nearest branch that I can find, and I doused it in lighter fluid with a vanilla extract. It has to be straight from the bean and nothing artificial. Waving it around like just trying to knock down cobwebs in the group of job and song real loud as they scattered into the woods. I would have to leave the stick burning on the ground in case they returned. It's not a bit like homemade cookies. Life would be so much easier if you can't exhibit at the same degree of simplicity. It was actually pretty watching their lights dance into the darkness. These creatures used to be a larger concern, and people would mistake the globe of their bodies for the glowing of red eyes. Sitting in my truck to make sure that nothing unsavory had followed the group of jobs. Thankfully I was able to leave that side without any incident. The next call came through the radio. As I was leaving the site. The place was several dozen miles out, and add any clothes with the morning light. Alexa had it that I don't work my morning job tomorrow, and this cryptid is a very hyper one into a fault. So I shifted Elvis in a gear and I made my way and got it by my headlights. I watched the side of the roads, and not only did I want to avoid causing roadkill, knowing what a pain in the ass it was, but a lot of the more dangerous fellows will attack cars when there is. I was a handful of hours past before I reached mine. I didn't need to stop at home. I rolled up on a farmer's driveway, happy, not. I was greeted with a thickening voice. This man had been tend to the farm since he was 18. I wanted face relate to me that those youthful days were many years ago. He informed me that he had seen a small creature in his field and then it was leaving. Barren circle of corn can. We normally don't discuss with clients unless their information is pertinent, but some of the tough stomach ones don't mind a quick conversation. I assured him that I would take care of it, and I even just that I would try to avoid setting the field on fire. He told me that that would be ideal and gave me a brief history of the cryptids' activities, and with that I headed into the field. Supplies in tow, the small be my flashlight, attention to illuminate my way, but corn stalks resistance. It was hard to keep track of time. The field was so monotonous and the sky was still so dark. I had at least a good 2 hours before sunrise. I was pleased to make such a good time. During my walk I made sure to note the location of the clearance mentioned. After passing my third one I heard a clicking noise to my right hand. At this time I slowed my Jason. I flicked my flashlight off, brushing aside stalks of corn as gently as I could possibly, and I closed it on the rapid clinic in dominoes together. The noise was incredibly loud even as I just did a few feet from that. I could see it's the obstructing vegetation. The furball was chewing away on a stalk of corn and devouring it from the bottom up. Vanessa aggressive or cryptids tend to get names that lean towards cute, and this is to sway the community's opinion on them. Things like Job has a sugar grapes and this year furball are typically herbivores. On rare occasions, however, for a ball can become territorial if it finds about food source, like the one we were in. Even though I'd become still, it's halted its feet and he became aware of me. Furball 7 unparalleled sense of sight. Looking at me, this thing could see me just as clear as if the sun was directly above us. Well, all I could see was a tango about reaching its hairball. I could see the stalk of corned beef. Store balls are typically harmless, but this one had been. Terrorizing the livestock in the farm is daily, not to mention running large plots of the crowd by eating that night. There is something that I can just put a bullet into. Their bodies are 90% hair. Even the limbs are made from longer, harder fibers of hair. I would only get one shot before it started off and I wouldn't be able to trap it like my last time. No, this one is going to be trying to chase me quickly. I flickered my flashlight and its direction to agitate it and I began to run away. I can hear the tumbling line of dominoes as its short legs paddled after me. Fur balls are bundles of energy just as much as their life. Their movements are sporadic and unpredictable, and whatever it caught up, it would just jump across my path and take a swing on my legs and get braces. I had to, Winston, ignore the slicing of flesh. Whenever it managed to land on me, I was sure to wear something loose to get to text foresight. It only came out to about my thighs with a tight, so most of the strikes were around my ankle. It felt like running through an upset rose bush. I continue, though if I stopped I would get the worst of it for sure. So my arms and legs, cool, are pressing against my wounds, just what I thought. My knees, my buckle under the strain in my blood loss, which I had never been good with. Go figure. We came across a large circular cleaning where all the stalks have been ripped up and eating for the fur balls, dangerously high metabolism. Reaching into the pocket of my Blue Jay Hansen, I pulled out a pill bottle size cylinder, a metal. My fingers reached into the metal pen and pulled the loose, straining my body as much as I could. I whipped the sun grenade high above the cornfield. I hoped that I was far enough to avoid any ignition once I spent a round, and I threw myself to the ground and buried my face and what was left of the cornstarch and pulling my shirt. My issues were nothing compared to the furball's hypersensitive eyesight. It would be rendered useless for a good while. When you have something as efficient as the furball's eyes are, you tend to lean on it. That's energy. Turn on. Jason and I didn't have enough to even try stumbling away in some haphazard directions. The quickest and most painless way for me to kill it was by just letting it started. They have to eat pretty consistent. Later their active metabolism shut down and around 30 minutes, and is also a little muscle mass they have. It sounds terrible, but it really is a quiet way for them to pass on if they have a choice, and that's the one I go away with. I heard enough horror stories about hunters like to play with their hunts, drag it out, and that's not who I am. So I sat with it, watching its first win with each other that rushed with the cornfield, accompanied by a soft wrestling as its body was shutting down its arms and legs. We get to unravel and resemble the rest of its hair. The sun was coming up by now, that and I actually forgot the first brown, not black like the United States. I watched the terror, separate from the form and drift into the morning's wind until nothing was left, nothing but its eyes, the only part of the function, and by that wasn't in some manner made up of hair. I don't like killing most cryptids that I come across. Hell, if there are more peaceful solutions out of encrypted. They end up taking people from their family one way or another, even the job, and can keep somebody asleep for so long that their body gives up. Is it similar to the fur ball that was across from me? I have to stop these situations before they occur. I once slacked for sides, but I no longer do. I cleaned up the scene. You're still ringing. I placed the glass-like guys into a plastic bag, and they would also be ice in the cooler. I couldn't help but notice that the clearing looked a lot like a crop circle. Aliens, what a joke. Remind me, I haven't really introduced myself yet. My name is Jack 93. Cavalier Containment. Some cryptids are classified as such for sake of convenience. There are several categories. Are your most common? That's what you get. Your Loch Ness monsters. This category makes up the majority of contact. And then you have your intangible cryptids. You could technically call these things ghosts, but they're just a subset of creatures that seem to exist without a forum, and I've only ever had to deal with one of these. It was shortly after I began this job and I was called to the suburbs, to a nuclear family of The Exorcist manifest lights off in a more physical plane. Some of these guys will make you question the world around you, but it's a slippery slope, and when I avoid these type of cryptos require more out-of-the-box solutions. For example, while the mother told her children from the house to avoid the liking me and the father put on a show, the Lion King always appears the same, no matter the house. It shows itself initially as a yellow teddy bear, but it's a child, interacts with the like in college, and the bear will stretch its limbs, contour in a sick attempt to imitate a human form, and it's butt nice and deep into the plush skull. The bear's skin will turn from a vibrant yellow to a dirty tan. Its fur will be managed and ripped off and patches. Before I arrived at the house, I switched together a bodysuit. It was good enough. I pulled the suit on and I watched. I made my way to the front door and I stepped out, doing my best impression of a thoughtless form. I walked down the sidewalk. The children were begging and crying for their mother to run with them. Just as one of the children were about to take off, the father tackled me from behind and slammed me out of the pavement. I told him to sell it, but the brewers from my album for what felt like weeks. You spotted lines about how I would never steer his family again and I was going to jail for a long time. The bear mask that I made was and pulled off, revealing my face to the children. Staring at the little girl, I could see the gears turning. The bear that she had been seen wasn't some psychic vampire, it was just some weirdo in a costume. It was going to jail for the rest of their life. She was no longer convinced that the Lincoln County was anything more than that, and as such it would vanish from her thoughts. Other crickets act very much like the Lincoln County, but do so in more of an immediate, physical fashion. These are affliction cryptids. In this category of things, like fast jackets, hornet doves, and the cavalier containment, very few things can shut down an entire mile radius as the cavalier containment, Canada, and that was the subject of I called tonight. I was going to need much physical problems to do with the crypt. So after I had obsessively treated my wounds, furballs can be dirty little things, I started preparing for the hunt, although clans would be a more accurate word. The called informed me the inner city had several blocks shut down and had a quarantine. Victims were reporting to advance fur-like symptoms and their skin was showing sign of rapid decay at a cellular level, and appearances were also a cause for concern. Me and my employer knew that simply quarantined in the area wouldn't surprise Hollywood. Take was one rat to slip out to infect another area, and I threw on a heavy hazmat suit and I had it out. The more time I wasted, the more I risked the city-wide infection. Like I said, Elvis could haul ass, and with me driving the roads as much as I do every day, I have pretty good intuition on which ones I can press the pedal down on it. The Elvis roared down the side streets. No, I didn't bother checking this out of the road. If something wanted to jump at me, Elvis would be sure to take care of it. The bag of supplies resting on the passenger seat rattled and climbed with every bump. I was talking. I don't venture too far into the city. I used to that one years ago. I would spend entire weekends just fooling around, and that life is something I had to leave far behind, and memories of it served me little purpose. But at the very least I knew where I was going. I would find the afflicted area shortly after entering the city. It wasn't hard to spot all the other tape and no entry signs littered around. I parked a few blocks away before leaving. I had scrubbed the hell out of Elvis. He likes, cleaner than the day that I bought him. If there is even a hair of something that was once again around the infection side, and then I would just cause more problems and I would solve. The place was in complete shutdown. Insects. The things that the cavalier contained, it's absolutely loved. Carefully, I made my way from building to building, that trying to find the source of the contaminant. This affliction cryptid works very much like to the hive mind of bees. If it weren't for that, it would probably be an extinction level cryptid running rapping from state to state. Unfortunately, there is no longer than shutting down the highway before it takes too many victims. The source will send out a list of spores that will attach to any organic life and start to absorb it for energy, and that will then be converted into more spores. The whole quarantine zone had a thick green hue to it, as though it was swimming through swamp water. I could see the semi-intelligence for a swirling from house to house as I was. They were looking for the cavalier. Containment is aware of my presence as the cloud girl ever so thick around me. The spores were looking for any imperfection in the suit. I could hear rats and other small critters scurry and about. I came across one such wreck in the corner of a shut-down mini Martinique. His skin was being eaten away in several spots, were doing it almost neon green light as the contaminated away inside. I know that people are sick and on the verge of death, so I tried to hurry up, but something as simple as tripping up or sagging my suit on a loose now would cause a whole hunt to be a boss. After a few blocks have been cleared, I was convinced that I missed something, or that I just wasn't there enough with what I had come across. I only had a few houses left. I figured I could just clear them and just double back. I found something rather unexpected. The cavalier containment had a nasty habit of making its epicenter house somewhat immortal. As I stood observing my wife and I wanted to get too close in case it had enough energy to bring up and attack the nearest piece of meat. I heard anything on the street behind me. Slowly I turned to face when I swift to be the epicenter house, the large adult book before him. He's still with a vapor of green sports moving forward. I had no idea how I was expected to handle something so massive and powerful, let alone get to the source inside of it. I can just barely see it as I carefully approach the box inside. One of the open source of joining the massive box stomach was an I'm not actually green tumorous mask clinging to the box, and testimony tracked the virus needed to be so. In a flammable delivery of antibiotics, play heavy ones which needed to be set aflame by direct contact with an open flame. How I was going to do that was beyond me. Every time I close in, the buckwood turning gave several more feet to distances between us, which was honestly more favorable than the muscle Goliath going me through with its massive antlers. They were intricate and imposing. This guy for sure was an album going to result in the box just turn off. The virus had no effect on the house cognitive functions, so the buck was going to add. Tylenol has had his sights like this that just eat away at me. Such a proud and strong member of the ecosystem was reduced to nothing but a carrier. It's in a patchwork of brown and green lightings. It's not only minutes away from being unable to support the weight of its antlers. Sometimes on this job you have to forsake every safety measures. You will build up how to take a gentle approach, like putting on a show to let a little girl know that the bad man is gone. Sometimes you have to be the bad man. I classify. Hands are on the hood of my husband's suit, once white and now stay in a deep green with the patches of sport is stuck to it. Lifting up, I felt the spore-filled air swirling around my head. Every inhale felt like I was breathing soap. I told the rest of my suits until I was standing in, just my. Luckily, the lining of human organs is tough for them to get through, so I had a little time before irreversible damage occurred. Cautiously, stepping forward with an outstretched arm, I closed the gap between me and patients. Zero. Its body made the motion to beatbox with a few clicks. Like I was calling a cat to hide, quiet its attention until I could see my reflection and its eyes. Gently I brush what patches of intact fur I could find. Until the buck was motionless, freehand grabbing the bottle of liquid, I continued soothing the back. The lid slipped off and the antibiotics applied directly to the green mask. The best efforts were kept to keep the liquid from directly impacting the buck's remains. It would surely set the beast off. I had forgotten the flare it was taped. That has that suit. I backed up by clicking once more in the book. Thank God I had followed me. We danced together until I felt the suit at my feet kneeling down. I picked up the red floor and I cracked it. A bright red cast its light on me in the box and then the light disappeared as it was being shoved up to the caviar containment out of my head buds. I had to remain steady. The fire burned out. It was reaction with the antibiotics stripping and secretary of the viscous liquid that caused the infection and boiling the interior until all the spores had turned into an inactive mush. Shortly after the buck dropped to the ground and its antlers smacked against the pavement, the green sports around me began dropping just the same. I feel bad for the box. I really did, but if you need some solace, I could see that and not completely useless, and I pulled the green mask from inside the box. It was dormant now, but inside the green mask was a slush of spores with a highly potent poison on her. It might be useful with handling future to the truck. The authorities would discover on the wrong. The area was clear and I'd be called in the morning to remove the animals. I would have done it tonight, but my energy was quite literally drained, and when I arrived at the truck I noticed that his driver's side door had been left completely open, and which is something I need erratic mind would never do. I searched the interior and I found nothing missing until I don't know. I checked where I started my revolver. Instead of a shining metal handgun, I know when to leave the situation, and when I happened to glance and I passed you. So I went down to see a distant pair of yellow orbs watching me. I left the scene. Even on the drive home, I could see the same pair of the other eyes every few miles. Once I got home, on my doorstep was a shiny metal revolver, or, as I know, saw it a warning night for the Salem children. Despite having work in the morning after shutting down the events of last night, I spent a good amount of time just holding the revolver and twisting the silver between my fingers. I went over my ever-expanding knowledge of cryptids to try to decide what could be sending me a message, and the time I've been working, not once as I work, follow me home. Animals don't tend to hold grudges, and while cryptids' behavior can be unique, I've never heard of something like this. Not only was the culprit smart enough to target me specifically, but it must have been watching me for a while. It's also had to have a ridiculous amount of speed or have an alternative mode of transportation. Intangible cryptos are capable of disappearing and reappearing, but they're typically bound to one area between the time that I returned to the truck last night. Maybe something like around the speed of a mile with could cover the distance big. Maybe I lost all my thoughts. I filled it. Noticed the sun creeping through my window, so my biggest threat tonight was a complete lack of sleep. The telephone ringing nearly threw me off my chair, but I was pleasantly surprised that some of their poor soul was going to have to clean up what was left of the contaminants mask. Hopefully the me-wolf didn't decide to stick around. I would be the only highway patrol, which is a godsend. I drove from spot to spot doing the usual, except this time around. I was skeptical of every vehicle that followed me around too many times, and I kept pulling over just to see if they'd drive past me, and they all did around. Halfway through my shift I stopped into a diet at a quick cup of coffee. I needed several to stay away. As I was sitting at the table, a waitress walked over to me and placed a cup of coffee down, and I played stacked with pancakes. But when she noticed to be welded look on my face and she mentioned that somebody had covered the bill for me, I questioned her, but she didn't get a good look at him, only remarking the man, and told her that I had been through a long night. I started skating the diner, but she said that he had left after paying for the food. It didn't order anything for himself. I guess my better judgment can. I obeyed the rumble from my abdomen and I ate the pancakes. Whoever this man was, he was trying to send a message. If you wanted to kill me, he knew where I lived. At least I know. It's not some kind of cryptid, and maybe he was at the Cavalier site and saw me playing. And did he orchestrate the infection to what ends with somebody take out several blocks of life like that? The alarm on my phone alerted me when my break was done and I quickly poured the coffee issues and then my shift was over. I just enough time to head home and take a power and a half. I keep in the radio next to my head and I drifted off to the static. The universe took some form of mercy on me and I didn't get to call for another 3 hours. I didn't wake up feeling refreshed and renewed when louder on the radio woke me, but I got enough to get me through. My next time had a cryptid of sorts, Hans, and its premises, and my employer gave me all the known details and I gather my supplies. I didn't need much this time around, just some heat-resistant clothing and I'm breathing apparatus. After brief delegation I decided to leave the magnet behind. If I need a gun, my shotgun was always around. I'm headed out. Before I knew it, I was sitting outside of the manager and I got out and I made my way to his house. The door is locked, but that was only a momentary issue. Walking inside felt like I had stepped into a furnace. Only moments after entering I was sweating and my grandma's. I could see a decent amount of the house from where I was standing and what I needed to find was it on the ground floor, and when I made my way upstairs I was mad with the cryptid it still facing me, not because I don't know. It likely had been standing there for a while, Salem children. It wouldn't attack anybody. If I stayed in the heat to generate it for too long, I might as well have fallen victim to a house fire. These poor souls are said to be the physical manifestation of Hatfell by children being burned, for which accusations I was a bit lost, though normally they only surface when the ground is being disturbed and there is a similar magic around. The house looked like it had been there for a number of years and there is no signs of something like remodeling the Salem child, and I like to ask for a few moments. Its eyes are nearly have noticed there is. Why does a tennis ball? And avoid of any ocular future. They only have the appearance of ambers, like when you blow on wood to feed the empress on a campfire. The fire in its eyes was replicated along its black ash and scanner. The flames ran through its veins replacing blood. Otherwise it looks like a normal child coming up to about 3 feet and a little pot by later it's called. The only way to kill the Salem child is to kill its source of power, similar to a cavalier. The house remained perfectly intact despite the heat, and nothing was out of place. I didn't even consider that I had spotted a pair of cars parked in the driveway. I didn't take that into account until I walked into one of the children's to see the child and his father huddled in the corner. If you're going to be a hunter like me, one of the first things you should know is you'll have to deal with loss, the weather. You hear the news that's one of your fellow hunters that lost to their encounter, or you held sympathy for the cryptos, as I do the hardest those when you can't save the victims. You're either not fast enough, for the circumstance was inevitable. It's hard to deal with either way. This time around I just wasn't fast enough. Even with all my precautions I couldn't stay for longer than 30 minutes. But the source will generally have a magical vibe to it. It could be anything from a crystal to a spell book. Walking through the house, I glanced at their family photos, the father, his son and the wife, who hadn't seen yet. She was in all the photos, smiling wider than anyone, and they were happy. And at the time I didn't know what you would do if she came home after all this. I was debating in my mind if I should stay in that scenario or take off before she even got home. Everywhere I want the Salem child would follow me. Smile, flecks of fire, drift, call the artifact, and I destroyed it, and that was it. I had a few rooms left to check on the first floor, but some of the gears we going to turn. I made my way back upstairs leaning, and I took a closer look at the family photos. The mother, well, happy, gave off a very specific vibe. I looked back at the Salem child, annoying my sorrow, leading up to the attic. I only paid to confirm my suspicions. I hate being right. Sometimes it was dark, but I could see several spell books at half, burned candles littering the wooden floor. I still half of a circle drawn on the floor with various symbols placed inside. The store is, despite all of this, wasn't in the attic. Climbing down, I found a window that, without the backyard, in my heart, sank. Looking back at the child, I thought of the trauma that put his anger. It's going to be up to her. I hope that she sets you free. I'm not a man of many words, and I know I was essentially talking to myself. Maybe I was just passing the back. And what does Salem child? Casually following my movements, I'm in my way to the backyard of the field. That was a backyard. It was massive and free of any eyesores until the tree line. A few dozen feet away, I saw several other holes, told me that she had been at it for a while. The back door swung closed after me, and the Salem child had stepped off the patio and out of the grass. The wife picked her up, when the door slammed, and followed me. She had been crying. Her makeup was even greater than her hair. I'll find it. Let's hear somewhere, she started out. I don't know how or why, but she seemed to know the reason I was visiting. Perhaps it was that I was there at all, letting the burning child follow me around. I didn't know how to respond. I'm not much for conversations, but if I left her to her own devices, she would only make matters worse. She too was sweating. It wasn't the heat. Now she can feel the radiator. You're not going to find the source, I remarked. The shotgun was rattling around in my shaking hands. Because it's you, I stated, before she could even wear it. She had been practicing magic and had the unfortunate mishap of practice in and near the buried bodies of a child that had been burned alive when humans were still learning about the oddities of the world. To my surprise, and I suppose, relieved, she became. The three of us sit in silence until I bent over, placing the shotgun under the grass, and there was one more exchange of glasses, and I walked away from the two of them. There is a pit of my throat. As I walked towards Elvis, the door opened and I sat inside, listening to the quiet that the night had to offer. My fingers grasped onto a small golden ring hanging around my chest, knuckles turning white. I tried to change my feelings down as far as I could. I tell you this because I want you to know how important it is to remain as human as possible even when all the chips are down. The night was silent for what felt like forever, and just as I was worried that was going to run rapid and then I was going to have to do something on speakerphone, and it took many long breaths in and out to stop myself from rocking back and forth because I still had a job to do, and once again left my truck and I paced my way around the house to the backyard, and I couldn't bring myself to look at her. I avoided it as much as possible, scooping up the Salem childhood again. Tonight I would leave the cause of death or leave to see that while I was away, and my truck had been messed with it, and I loaded everything up and I placed a child jelly on the back seat wrapped in blankets, and it felt wrong to just throw them in the truck bed. Like road killer, I turned the truck on up, pulled away from the house and left the whole scene behind, all the while he's annoying the bright yellow. I just wasn't in the mood for anything else. The road back was long, lonely, and it smelled far too much like ash. I took it upon myself after getting home to dig a grave for the child and place some inside, not just for his sake, but the family as well. I was never under the impression that I was going to save every soul that I came across, but it never fails to get under my skin. I'm far too tired physically and emotionally to go over anything else, and I just want to get to sleep. I hope you all sleep well. Night 5, Fast Jacket. I'll admit it, last night was a rough one for me. I'm losing. Something like that reminds me of why I started all this in the first place. After writing down what I had gone through during the Salem child hunt, I received news that I would be sent as a backup tonight in my line of business. Backup, as a corporate way of telling us the last hunter failed and we were expected to clean up. The more often than not, failure was death. Sleep wouldn't have come easy if I wasn't so exhausted, but my dreams didn't pull their punches. I saw her face and everything. I woke up and I went through the throes of my day job, and I'll be honest, nothing really. Do you really want me to say that I picked up some roadkill day after day, and that's not why you're here? I have a lot to write down and a lot I need to do after I finish writing tonight's entry. So we're going to cut right into the hunt. As I said, it was a backup call. They didn't tell me who, only had to report back after being sent out. When they told me what I would be hunting, I wasn't surprised. I told you before that it's not all cryptids are bad, and then I generally don't take any joy in killing them, but some of them, and they only exist to make people miserable. The Fast Jacket is one such evil creature. Even worse, you have to come to them as long as they have their source of food. Before I went to work, I needed to find peace with my emote, so that's what I did. Elvis and I passed through Whining Forest and La Crosse Amber pastures. I couldn't help but think about all the hands that I've been to in these places. How would I become as much of the ecosystems as any other wildlife? When I found the CD that I wanted, I let it slide into the player and I turned the volume to max, stepping out so I can hear the speakers on top of the truck buzzing the life with static. I pulled a mess of copper wire from the truck bed and I double-checked my pockets before heading into the building. Siding in the ground floor, I observed the Vegas and broken structure before me. Not a single car inside. It wouldn't be hard to find the Fast Jacket. I just needed to ascend and take a quick peek until I have and go. With each step I heard either broken glass or chunks of concrete fall apart under my heavy boots. The further I went up, the dark of the structure became as the wind whistled through each level in the staircase I used to climb up. The wind seemed to carry the sound of static coming from my truck. Below, 42 is empty, 43 was empty, 44, 45 I almost missed it, despite it being the only blemish of shadow on them before it was hunched over several feet away from the stairwell I want, and when I was close enough I threw the copper wire under the concrete. It didn't make much noise, but the Fast Jacket noticed it regardless. It's being shown and its movements almost human, but still I could see its wriggling skin in the building jade. Perhaps that's not the right way to describe it. Imagine you bought a skin-tight suit that covered every inch of you. Imagine that suit mimicked the color of your scanner. Imagine it had consciousness and was eating your body under it at a snail's pace that I left you a lot, but it's unable to move on your own volition. That's a Fast Jacket until it finds a host and might as well be a piece of paper. What's the matter? So people like hunters would be a delicacy for this thing, where the host face would be as blank as save for a few surgical-like cuts that open and close like heart valves, allowing the house to get oxygen. These guys are non-stop killers. They feed on and feed the guy. They have no selection process and will often use their host to kill. The next piece of food is to discussing cycling. I could tell looking at this thing, and most of its mobility comes from the house it takes on. There aren't too many ways to deal with that. Bullet seemed largely bronze, however, burns the damn thing. A mixture of pressure and bronze will send its flash into private ability to pop at the body, if enough of it is applied. The fast jacket is making its way over, walking in a half circle to avoid the wire that I dropped. And then it started. Unfamiliar songs started to play for my radio speakers. I closed my eyes and for just a moment I could hear the roaring crowd. I was back 5 years, if only for a brief moment. Are there other ways to deal with the fast jacket? Sure, I know a few. Is this how I chose to do it anyway? Yes, I close my face and I put my arms up. My wife, who was my entrance on cascading into the building, the fast jacket lunged forward and took a swing at me, and aggressive things they are, my head is just lowered. Her response, until I was under the things to talk to swift jabs, one from each arm fired out like pistons. It had been so long that I was surprised. My body remembered how to do this. The bronze left to burn mark on a small trailer of each impact point. I moved swiftly to get back and stance, but my favorite was returned. I felt a hard blow to my face that I could hear my nose giving way under the pressure, and all too familiar crack my back at the ropes that hit concrete. It started throwing hands on me like a desperate drunk, but a drunk that was much stronger than me. Blows landed hard over my body and I could taste of dark red iron building around my tongue. My arms up as best as I could, but the loop is slamming into its side. Keep going and don't get cocky. I need to overclock its functions. It's a nurse. It was in my hands. After the second hand, it wouldn't know how to back off or switch things up if I kept hitting that. I was in control. Screw this thing. My body became. A machine is powerful. As last, I would have noticed how much the knuckles were ripping up my skin until afterwards, once again, the thing fell to the concrete. This time I passed out and I proceeded to Public's face and the burns from the bronze sending plumes of smoke into my eyes. My song was long over. The fight was over, with all my aggression out. I set up and I returned to the wire with which I wrapped the fast jacket up with. The wire would turn off to keep it dormant until I got home and used the more permanent solution. The track down the stairs was eye-opening, making me come to terms of just how much damage his fast jacket did. And it's free, I'll be purple all over come sunrise place in the fast jacket, where I normally throw these things. I opened the door and I turned the truck on and I began my drive home. I was in a bit of a rush. I wanted to get home and soak in a nice hot bath, take care of the skin in my truck bed. I wasn't being careful, I was spending too much and watching the road too little. I could have seen it one moment. I was watching my headlights covering the road, and then next I could see the payments moving to the hood as my truck flipped over the payments. After my hang time was over, the seat belts and rubbed far too many of my injuries frantically my seat belt. I reached for my shotgun and I dragged myself out of the bus to driver's side window and glass cutting against my skin, giving me further last chance. Once on the pavement I looked over myself, cuts and patches of blood. I tried to collect my surroundings. Looking back to the cables, I was met with a figure basket in the globe of the trucks, flickering headlights good enough. Looking up, now on my knees and powerless to move, he was towering over my somehow paralyzed frame. I had just got a few rounds with the riving mass of muscle, and whatever this was shut me down with just a touch. I was searching through everything I know about cryptids for an answer button. Nothing wrong about, and said I asked a question, what do you want from me, and why he wanted it. I want you to stop hunting, he said. As he let go of my shoulder and began to pace around my crash site, my body became lax. The moment he let me free of whatever control he had. You and your people are messing with the natural order, and he boomed. A layer of rage is bubbling just underneath his calm demeanor. I think he was observing the chair in the ring that. He said he was upset with the situation and I couldn't get a read on them. Whatever your motivation, you must forget it because next time you and I meet. He looked over at Elvis, wrecked and twisted. Only one of us will be leaving soon. He then turned and began to walk away from me. I wanted more than anything to put a spread of bullets in his back. Before the thought even crossed my mind, he was long gone. I had been watching in the entire time and even now I can't recall the moment, the advantage. I can't help but feel that she wasn't some cryptid. But I can't for the life of me come up with another explanation. I say to that road, until my knees started to burn, I would just swivel head back and forth looking at the scattered remains in my truck, looking at the fast jacket from truck bed during the crash. I had to do something with that. That copper wire would last forever and I wouldn't be wanting to fight again. I dragged myself to my feet and I hopped over to the creature and, grabbing his feet and I started pulling up. The wire scraped against the pavement. For the last half mile that took for me to get home, my body reacted like I had been hiking an entire week straight every hour. I did make it home and the fast jacket made it into cold storage where its feeding would be frozen so I could properly take care of it. I'm ready to you now and I don't know what to do. I want to tell myself that I'm a good day. I could take the purple man down and that's what I'm calling him. The trappy said it was a show of intelligence, capabilities, power. He wanted to know how many weeks of me he was. I want to get back out there and hunt the things that prey on the innocent. But if my next time is my last, is there a point? Will he even let me leave my house tomorrow? I want to be able to keep talking to you folks, but as I stare at my back window I see two graves, two different parts of my life buried back there, and right now I can't return to either of them now without losing more. I called a tow truck and they went down and picked up Elvis as fast as I could. I'm tend to my wounds, as best as I can, right now as well. I've gone through nearly an entire bottle of rubbing alcohol and a few bottles of harder alcohol too. I was under the impression I was the type that lives to work. So what if I am unable to get back out there? The roadkill job is fine, but at the end of the day it's empty. No, I was helping people in some capacity. Knowing that I was at least getting these creatures to quit, at least most of them, was just a real feeling that it was a good ride. But I'm beaten. Sorry guys, I'm done. Good night, goodbye, Jack's Revenge. You're not down on the mat, you're not out. I spent a good long time thinking after I wrote my final entry and it's morning now. It feels weird writing this so early, and normally the sun is either long gone or it's just coming up. I didn't sleep much. It seems to be a running theme. Lately I set up my yard for a good long while I sat and I talked with her. I remember the pain, how it didn't compare to the bruises that I suffered. Most cryptids are not to hurt people, but when they do, I'm called in and I started doing this to help others escape my pains. My emotions have settled and, while it's not the most rational thought that could have entered my mind, I was knocked down, my back was on, the 10 count was ringing in my ear. I still have one last punch in me because the purple man isn't going. I wasn't just giving up a lifestyle if I decided to stop, and I was putting others at risk. I spent so much time hunting down cryptids, learning their ins and outs, what to avoid and what to explain. As I said, on my backyard with her, I couldn't help but shift to the cold storage and think of the crypts that I had recently caught, about how I would go about setting up a trap that could stand a chance of overpowering the purple man. Lucky for me, I already had the perfect bait. He would be coming to me. I've got a lot of work to do before I head out tonight, and I'm going to be spending all day in cold storage. Alright, what happens tonight? Should I make it back? As I said, I spent in the past week tinkering away at anything that could give me an advantage, but nothing I had was going to be enough to put it down. While I did know that for sure and I needed to go overboard and plan for something big to happen, I needed more than just some clever tools. I would need help. I pulled a dusty blue tarp away from the motorcycle that he'd just been sitting dormant since I started the roadkill work. To my complete elation, the girl started up hurrying to life. The year that I had prepared wasn't heavy or troublesome. Apart from the small speaker and microphone that I had strung up to my back, the rest was all over the dice, something that I had never done before. But with light getting low and I had to get started, the motorcycle took me away from the house for what could have been the last time. I drove for miles before coming across them again. Group of jobs and deep enough in the woods at the red lights were barely visible for the put in the kickstand on. I let myself breathing on it and I began what was going to be a very long night. All the while I worked, I can feel the sensation of being observed, every step judged, even as I grabbed his dirty branch and wrapped it with an old t-shirt, dancing and lighter fluid and with a small job of vanilla, I set at a place. I guided the pack as they backed away from the fire. How many there too? They will be attracted to it. For a long time I had no idea how long it would take for the purple man show up if he wasn't already there waiting for me to slip up. How was acting fast, but trying to remain aware of my surroundings, even though blanket, just a brief moment was enough time for him to slip into you with. My eyes were opened, he said, on the opposite side of the job, and a pack of red lights separated us. Same dust or wrap around his body. I could see him as clear as day now, not only from the glow of the job and stuff because of the furball's incredible eyesight and they were wildly uncomfortable to wear. But what makes it so powerful? What is it how the pupils receive light? In fact, their eyes are ABS in a pupils. Inside their eyes have a glass-like shell that manipulates the light going into it, the warping small beams of light, into something more powerful. It took a while to sand the outside layer down to find a fit that I can live with. It was actually the hardest process of the night. So, with the layer of glass twisted and amplifying light sources and my pupils receiving it in a generous bill of light, the purple man stood. He drifted out of my vision and back again, placing his open palm out of my shoulder. I felt his clawed fingers pushing me down, a familiar feeling of my body disobeying my orders to stand my snacks against the road. And we were just as we were the night before, except the road as much cleaner and I hadn't fallen into a strap. He had fallen into my mind. With all the strength that I could manage, I pushed a small syringe. My mind drifted thinking about how it felt to plunge myself into the dirt just a couple days ago, how it felt to pull the Salem child from his grave. It filled me with shame to have to file his grave with my thumb pressing on the syringe's plunger. It filled me with fire. Listen until he dedicated his grave. The burning blood coursed through my veins. That I had never felt before her. Nothing before compared to the pain rushing through my body. Focusing solely on the pain, as I had hoped, I was able to override whatever the purple man did to shut me down. My movements were jagged and stuttered, but I was able to raise myself up to the purple man's eye level and we like to glare in his face. Contorted is something like a child who received a new plaything. The word incredible mumbled out from behind a sharp teeth, pulled his other arm up and loved with his fingers, making a sort of spear with his hand. He finds the spear hard into my chest. When he was mad with the resistance, when he didn't even make it through my new jacket's leather-like exterior. He's scared. I needed to dissect the fast jacket anyways, and I used a knife coated in bronze to perform the crude autopsy. And freedom. And underneath it was unfortunately long gone. When I had removed the fast jacket completely, I had to take a note. That's where my broken made contact the skin. I said before that I'm not much for arts and crafts, but I was able to do a half-decent job. So in the fast jackets, burnt skin into a jacket. The prospect of wearing this thing around was revolves about to work. The purple man couldn't penetrate the fast jacket, even burned as it was. In response to this, the purple man backed to me and observed my former looking for other tricks up my sleeve, no doubt. Did you notice the small handmade handle being held at my side by the pants belt? You got something to kill me? But he asked and replied by lifting a small bone white knife from my hip, or rather a thing. Pulling the largest thing from its body was the easiest of the processes, but vital. Their teeth can pierce and rip apart just about anything, and if bullets are, pellets were going to do the job. Out of my left pockets I retrieved a small vial full of green liquid, body still shaking from the burning blood. I smashed the vial over the thing. It's the green over the smooth white. I stumbled forward at first, but once again my footing, the small knife, was thrust forward and plunged into the purple man's chest. The thing pierced right through his clothing and skin as if I just assaulted the air. He was confident that the small knife, even if it broke his skin, wasn't enough to deal with damage, especially if you were to regenerate as half of these cryptids do. In his arrogance saw what he let himself get cocky. I understood. I had been there hundreds of times before. The thing only served as the delivery method. As the thing made it to the purple man's interior, drops of green liquid also made their way in once. It is Dallas that had to biotics and burn the Cavalier's containment. It becomes a dormant virus that loses the ability to spread spores as its insides of the paste. If the mass is kept on the said paste, it will not be toxic, but as it heats up it begins to reactivate. It's still an incredibly potent virus, but the only way to be to ingest the virus or have it intro. The first time he seemed more beast than man, but it wasn't enough, and I know I wasn't even, as I watched him drop to his knees like watching feverishly at his chest. I know there wasn't anything I alone could do to kill him. His body was fighting the virus and it was winning, and the short time it was in him they were still close enough. With all the anger that the burning blood is still to me, I have it over to the speaker hiding in the bush and play. Click of a button on the microphone picked up on the job and song and amplified it. The song spread out like a shock wave, filling the forest around us with the most irritating hum. The purple man continued in the clutches of the virus, slowly winning it over. I walked over to my motorcycle and I started it up. The pier was drowned out completely by the song. Me and the purple man were wrapped in. I had no idea what this man was, and while I intended to look more into it, I knew that he wasn't pound for pound strength. It was the hum of the bike's motor that was rumbling the road. But if I feed, the purple man felt it too, and I could see it in his eyes as he took one more glass. They were almost pleading on, not for him but for me, even in the lavish darkness, to defeat he whipped for me. There is a very important rule that I brought tonight in. By all accounts, I shouldn't be typing this now. If something can throw a tree at you, do not mess with it. As I settled down to the bike and I watched the purple man's head quickly turn towards the side of the road, the train was at its station. Call 700 pounds blur crashed out on the purple man. Somehow, the screams that he let out rose above the songs, a desperate cry. They aren't violent, they really aren't. When you turn what's normally a sign of nearby food into an ear-piercing siren call, they might go a little bit, babe. I wanted to watch what the hair plaster became with the purple man, but if I waited around too long I would fall victim as well. The big man would smash the speaker and likely use the purple man for food until it wouldn't be much. I've never been that close to one before. It's brown, surprisingly. Can't shame. I didn't get to see his face, but that's for the best. It didn't see mine either, and I didn't need to piss it off more than I already had, if that was possible. I'm home now, safe for the time being. I move my jackets in contacts. I put all the items away and cold storage, save for the... I wanted to bury them, but I might need them again. You have to have that kind of foresight in the sign of work. I don't know what to do next. I think maybe I'm going to take a break. The last few days to beat me up pretty bad, and while tonight went better than I could have hoped, I still am lost with what I'm doing. The purple man seemed to care more for the cryptids and had a hatred for me that went beyond just hurting me, like he was angry at the whole system, and not to mention the mark. It's a shame I won't be able to retrieve his body. Now that I think about it, I apologize if you guys expected more for me, and maybe there will be. I'm taking a vacation from all this and going somewhere nice and warm for a little bit. There are things I need to look into, and if I'm discovering anything interesting I'll be sure to contact a lot of you. Thank you for the support and interest in my line of work. You are all part of what reminded me of what it means to lose, how important it is to protect what you still have. That I buried the Salem child once again next to my wife just says before I loved her, and it is hard to admit, but there was once a time I wasn't able to protect her. I didn't know how to bring it up to you guys. I didn't even know if it was information that was needed. Well, anyways, I became what I am because something took her away from me, something I didn't understand at the time. I wish that the man I am now I was able to be there for her back then, but I wasn't. I figured that if I'm leaving you guys for a while, I should tell you at least. She always told me I needed to take a break every now and then. So here's to you, baby, at least be Isaac's, my Elvis.